You don't want to live in my neighborhood. Trust me, watching a $1 million mansion sink into a muddy quagmire is only topped by seeing the HOA president who caused it try to explain why everyone's dream homes are now swampfront property. Hey, I'm Ethan Caldwell, and if you're stuck dealing with an HOA, drop your location in the comments. I want to know where else this kind of chaos might be brewing. Today, I'm telling you how my local HOA president tried to strong-arm me off my family's land by turning my creek into a concrete slab, only to transform his fancy gated community into Georgia's newest marshland. It all started one cool April morning. I was on the porch of my late grandmother's cabin, coffee in hand, ready to snap photos of some early migrating warblers. That's when I saw didn't see it. The creek that had babbled through our property for decades, home to minnows, frogs, and the occasional fox, was gone. In its place, a gray, lifeless slab of concrete, stretching upstream like the world's most depressing runway. My coffee mug hit the deck, shattering, but I was already sprinting to the creek bed, my photographer's instincts kicking in even as my brain reeled. The concrete was fresh, maybe a day or two old, and it wasn't just ugly, it was a crime scene. Dead fish lay scattered across the surface, their scales glinting in the morning light, already drawing flies. I pulled out my camera, hands steady despite the fury building inside me. As a former environmental engineer turned wildlife photographer, I knew exactly what this meant. Someone had just gutted an ecosystem, and they'd done it on my land. Then came the growl of an engine. A black SUV with Hawthorne Properties plastered on the side rolled down my private drive like it owned the place. Out stepped Victor Hawthorne, president of the Paradise Pines HOA, in a suit that cost more than my truck and a grin like a snake oil salesman closing a deal. "Morning, Ethan," he called, waving like we were buddies instead of what we really were, the guy trying to bulldoze my life and the guy who wasn't budging. "Morning," I said, my voice tighter than I meant. "Care to explain why my creek's a sidewalk now?" Victor's smile flickered, but he recovered fast. "Just some drainage work, Ethan. The HOA voted to fix erosion issues impacting Paradise Pines. We're doing you a favor, no more flooding when it storms." He gestured at the concrete like it was a modern art installation, not an ecological disaster. "A favor?" I couldn't help the bitter laugh. "This creek's older than your neighborhood. It feeds the Benton County Wetlands Preserve. You do realize you just broke about a dozen environmental laws, right?" His eyes narrowed, just for a second, betraying a hint of panic. "Now, Ethan, don't be dramatic. Our lawyers cleared everything. And frankly, we've been patient. How many offers have we made for your property? 4? 5? My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. And I've said no every time. This land's been in my family for 3 generations. My grandmother left it to me because she knew I'd protect it." Victor's charm vanished. He stepped closer, voice low. "Let's be real, Caldwell. Your little shack is a blight. We've got homes worth $3 million, and your cabin's dragging down property values. The homeowners are sick of it. This can go easy, or it can go hard, but Paradise Pines will be a premium community." I raised my camera and snapped a shot of him standing in front of his concrete monstrosity. "Get off my land, Victor. And tell your HOA they just made the worst mistake of their lives." As he stormed back to his SUV, he shouted, "You can't fight us, Caldwell. The HOA always wins." I glanced at my camera's display. The photo was perfect. Victor Hawthorne, smug and oblivious, with his environmental felony as the backdrop. "You're the one who made the mistake," I muttered. "You just don't know it yet." That night, I sat at my grandmother's oak desk, surrounded by old property records that smelled faintly of cedar. Grandma Caldwell had been a stickler for documentation, and her files were a goldmine. In a 1952 deed, I found what I was looking for, a water rights clause that made my pulse race. The natural waterway known as Caldwell Creek shall remain unobstructed in perpetuity, with rights to its flow granted to all downstream properties and ecosystems. The HOA hadn't just trespassed, they'd violated a legal protection older than their entire development. I opened my laptop and dug into public records, leveraging my engineering background to navigate county databases. After 2 hours and too much coffee, I hit pay dirt. Minutes from Paradise Pines HOA meetings, obtained via a public records request someone else had filed. The documents were damning. 3 months ago, in a confidential session, the board had discussed the Caldwell problem. Sloppy redaction left just enough visible to reveal their plan. Mr. Hawthorne proposed a solution to acquire the Caldwell property. Phase 1. Restrict water flow to induce flooding. Phase 2. Wait for seasonal rains to worsen damage. Phase 3. Offer a low ball price when the property is distressed. Motion passed, 5-1. The lone dissenter? Linda Grayson, a board member. I noted her name for later. The next day, I tracked down Nate Sullivan, the contractor named in a work order attached to the minutes. His office was a dusty trailer on the edge of town. Nate was a burly guy with weathered hands and a guilty look. When I showed him photos of the concrete, he paled. "Goddamn," he muttered. Victor swore the permits were handled. Said it was standard drainage work. "Did you check the permits yourself?" I asked, already knowing the answer. He shook his head. He paid cash, 25% above my rate. Said he'd handle the paperwork. "I've got 2 kids and a mortgage. I needed the job." He hesitated, then added, "I knew something was off when he wanted it done at night, but I told myself it was just rich folks being picky." Armed with Nate's admission, I spent the next week documenting the fallout with an engineer's precision. I measured water table changes with old equipment from my consulting days, photographed pooling water in Paradise Pines' manicured lawns, and flew a drone to capture aerials showing how the concrete dam was back flooding the very homes it was meant to protect. The irony was almost poetic. Soon, Paradise Pines started to look like a wetland preserve. Retention ponds overflowed, basements filled, and pristine yards turned into muddy lakes. Mother Nature was serving up a masterclass in consequences, and I was her unofficial photographer. Then my phone rang. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Rachel Carter from the County Environmental Protection Office. We've had reports of unauthorized construction impacting Caldwell Creek, which runs through your property. Can we meet? How soon can you get here?" I replied, "You're going to want to see this." 2 weeks later, Paradise Pines was a soggy mess. Lawns that once hosted cocktail parties now bred mosquitoes. I was out photographing a drowned azalea bush when I heard shouting. The Hendersons, who lived in a sprawling estate near my property line, were losing it. Mrs. Henderson, usually polished in her yoga gear, was yelling at a landscaping crew. "We paid $60,000 for this yard, and now it's a swamp." The crew chief shrugged helplessly. "Ma'am, the ground's too saturated. Nothing we plant will survive." By Monday, Victor called an emergency HOA meeting. I wasn't a member, but county public comment laws let me attend. I showed up early, laptop bag stuffed with data. The Paradise Pines clubhouse was a gaudy mix of chandeliers and fake Tuscan columns, packed with about 70 furious homeowners. The air crackled with tension. Victor opened with his usual slick charm. "Friends, I know there's concern about drainage issues. The board is addressing this with utmost urgency." A guy in the front row stood up. "Urgency? My basement's got 8 inches of water, Victor. My kids can't even play in the yard." Victor raised his hands. "Now, Tom, let's stay calm. These issues are temporary and unrelated to our recent improvements." I raised my hand. "Point of order, Mr. President. May I speak during public comment?" Victor's jaw twitched, but he nodded. "The chair recognizes Ethan Caldwell for 3 minutes." I connected my laptop to their Projectorno password, amateurs, and pulled up my analysis. "This is Caldwell Creek's natural flow before your concrete dam," I said, clicking to a map. "And this is now. You've created a hydraulic barrier that's flooding Paradise Pines." The room exploded. Homeowners shouted questions. Victor tried to gavel them quiet, but it was like herding cats in a rainstorm. Then Linda Grayson, the dissenting board member, spoke up. "Victor, did we get permits for this creek work?" Victor's face reddened. "The permits are in progress, Linda. These things take time." Her eyes narrowed. "Funny, because I checked with the county. They have no record of any applications." Victor snapped. "This is absurd. We're under attack." He jabbed a finger at me. "This man's a saboteur. He's manipulated the water table to ruin our properties." I laughed. "Victor, I'm a photographer. The only thing I've manipulated is my aperture. Your contractor, Nate Sullivan, admitted you paid him to work without permits. Want me to play the recording?" The room went silent. Victor's face cycled through every shade of panic. Then Rachel Carter walked in, county inspector's badge gleaming, holding a folder like it was a loaded gun. "Good evening," she said. "I'm Rachel Carter, County Environmental Protection. Mr. Hawthorne, we need to discuss illegal modifications to Caldwell Creek. Now." Victor sank into his chair, the untouchable HOA kingpin suddenly looking very small. Rachel set up shop in my dining room the next day, spreading out maps and files with surgical precision. "Ethan," she said, adjusting her glasses, "I've been investigating Paradise Pines for months. Your creek gave me the leverage I needed." She slid over a file marked confidential. It was a bombshell: falsified environmental studies, forged wetland assessments, and accounting tricks that made Enron look tame. Victor's company, Hawthorne Properties, had built Paradise Pines on protected wetlands by bribing a now-fired county official. "Your creek stunt," Rachel said, "violates the Clean Water Act, state statutes, and a slew of local ordinances. And there's more." She showed me Nate's testimony. Victor had used toxic, quick-setting concrete hazardous waste meant for special disposal because it was cheap. He'd paid a shady contractor to dump it in my creek, pocketing the disposal fees. Rachel's investigation snowballed. She found Victor had been skimming HOA funds, reporting bribes as landscaping costs. The $800,000 supposedly spent on drainage improvements had gone to cover his tracks. Meanwhile, Paradise Pines was crumbling. 5 basements flooded, and an engineer found foundation cracks in 8 homes. Property values tanked. The rebellion ignited when Claire Ramsey, whose $5 million estate had black mold in the basement, hired a lawyer. Her husband, a retired prosecutor, rallied 4 other homeowners to sue. Linda Grayson called me that night. "Ethan, we're voting Victor out tomorrow. Can you bring your evidence?" I grinned. "I'll be there with bells on." The emergency board meeting was a circus. The clubhouse was packed, with homeowners, lawyers, and even a mold expert setting up an air quality monitor. Victor tried to shut it down, claiming improper notice, but Linda cited the bylaws. Any board member can call an emergency meeting if property values are at risk. I'd say our home sinking into a swamp qualifies. Homeowners unloaded. The Hendersons showed photos of their ruined lawn. The Chins presented $250,000 in foundation repair estimates. Claire Ramsey's mold specialist dropped a bombshell: toxic levels in my client's home exceed federal standards. "They're evacuating." I stood up, projecting my timeline of Victor's schemes. HOA minutes, Nate's confession, bank records showing cash withdrawals matching bribe dates. When I played Nate's recording, Victor paid me $60,000 in cash. Set to work at night, Victor lost it. "This is hearsay. You're all jealous of my vision." Claire Ramsey stood, holding a folder. "My husband's investigator found Victor's done this before 3 HOAs, 3 states, all with missing funds and environmental violations." The room gasped. An older resident, George Patel, spoke quietly. "My wife's garden is underwater. Those roses were her pride. Victor, you didn't just ruin our homes, you erased our memories." Linda moved to vote Victor out. It was unanimous, 5-0. Victor screamed about lawsuits as Rachel Carter reappeared with 2 officers. "Mr. Hawthorne, we need to discuss environmental violations and HOA fund misuse." As they let him out, he glared at me. "This is your fault, Caldwell." I snapped a photo. "No, Victor. I just documented it." 3 months later, I stood on the courthouse steps with my lawyer, Jessica Lynn, a sharp attorney who'd taken my case pro bono. Victor had sued me for $12 million, claiming defamation and sabotage. Inside, Judge Eleanor Vance, a no-nonsense veteran, presided. Victor, representing himself, ranted about a conspiracy, accusing me of engineering the floods. Jessica dismantled him, presenting timestamped photos, county reports, and Nate's testimony. The clincher was a video of a former official admitting Victor bribed him to ignore wetland violations. Judge Vance dismissed Victor's lawsuit and referred him for criminal prosecution. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said, "you built Paradise Pines on lies and environmental destruction, and now it's sinking literally." Outside, Rachel announced a restoration project. The Army Corps of Engineers will remove the concrete and restore the creek. The HOA's insurance is footing the bill. The crowd cheered. 6 months later, I watched a heron stalk fish in my restored creek. The concrete was gone, the water clear again. Paradise Pines had changed. Property values crashed, but the homeowners bonded, holding potlucks and rewriting bylaws to limit board power. Linda, now HOA president, led the recovery, fixing drainage properly. Victor was in prison, serving 7 years for fraud, environmental crimes, and embezzlement. The feds recovered $4 million from his offshore accounts, funding repairs. My cabin became a local legend, featured in magazines as a symbol of resilience. One morning, Claire Ramsey stopped by with a pie. "We were wrong to let Victor target you," she said. "This taught us what matters. We're selling moving somewhere simpler, no HOA." As the creek babbled, I reflected. Victor wanted my land for profit, but lost everything. Nature won, with a little help from a stubborn photographer and a good lawyer. If you're fighting an HOA, document everything, know your rights, and trust that water always finds its level.